Welcome to the BEASTwriter podcast. I am your host, Ryan Sakamoto, and today we're going to be discussing, well, it's Fan Fridays, guys, so we're going to be discussing your questions that you have. So, for those who don't know, this is our third episode of the Fan Fridays. I answer fans' questions leading up to Friday. I put them in a bag, virtual mailbag, and we go ahead and discuss all things NFL or any workout related questions that you might have, all right? So let's go ahead and get started on that. First question comes from John, and again, before I get started, I don't know where you guys all follow me. Some is on Twitter, some's Instagram, Facebook, you name it. So I'll be navigating back and forth through all the social media platforms, so bear with me as I answer your guys' questions, all right? So John Q from Facebook says, love your work. See, already messed up on navigation. Love your work, bro. Been following you for years. My question is, do you think Arik Armstead will bounce back next season? It turns out you were right about him playing in a contract year. Well, thank you for your question, John. And my answer is, he better, right? I mean, why not? Why not this season? When you have players around the NFL who are playing at a high level without Pro Bowl talent or All-Pro talent around you and still getting it done, and you're upset about not making the Pro Bowl, this is your year to get it done. You look at all 32 NFL teams, you look at players like Myles Garrett from the Cleveland Browns, you look at Fletcher Cox from the Philadelphia Eagles, you look at guys like Grady Jarrett from the Atlanta Falcons, Cam Jordan from the New Orleans Saints, the list goes on and on and on. There's a lot of players getting it done without Pro Bowl talent around them, and the time is now to prove your worth as a Pro Bowl player. That's just my opinion, because if other players are getting it done with lesser talent around them, but still playing at a very high level, what does that say about them? And they're the ones making the Pro Bowl. So if there's a 1 year that to get it done for Arik Armstead, it would be this year. Because let's face it, if he comes back next year, which he is, he's under contract, they're not going to get rid of him or trade him. But if Nick Bosa can return for the season opener, and then all of a sudden Arik Armstead's stats fluctuate once again and inflate like he did last year, that's just a byproduct of having better talent around him, because he would be considered an afterthought at that point. Now look at it from another perspective, and let's peel back another layer of that. Jordan Willis has 1.5 sacks. He only played with the Niners for 3 games. That's the same equivalent total that Arik Armstead has in 10 games. Furthermore, now let's take it to an apples to apples comparison. Kerry Hyder Jr. plays the same position as Arik Armstead. 5.5 sacks leads the team as compared to Arik Armstead's 1.5. So again, it doesn't all come down to sack numbers. A lot of people put too much stock in the sack numbers. So now let's take it with a grain of salt, and let's break it down even further. In my grading system, as I cover all 32 NFL teams, Arik Armstead ranked first, which is worst, on the team with 34 missed assignments versus the run. 34 missed assignments versus the run last year. This year, he leads the team again with 17 missed assignments versus the run. So you can see where the deficiencies in his game lies. It's in run support. Not so much the pass rush. He's still getting pressure up front, not getting the sack numbers as you would like, but he is generating somewhat of a good pressure up front. But overall, I had him graded out as being below average. I mean, 5 being average on my grading system out of 10. 5 is average, 6 is above average. 6.5 to 7, you're playing at a Pro Bowl level. 7.3 and above, you're playing at All-Pro lights out level. He is graded out in my system at 3.61. So he's not even average at this point. Okay? Now, again, it goes back to if he gets 8 to 12 sacks next year, it's all for naught, because, of course, you're going to get that many sacks because you have Nick Bosa and other players around you who are making you look that much better. All right. The time is now for him to prove his worth as an $85 million man. Not tomorrow. Not today. Not today. Yes, today. But not tomorrow. Not next year. Now. All right. That's it for Arik Armstead. Let's move on. Brad Holmes from Twitter asks, what's up, Beast? Jimmy Garoppolo looks to be out in San Francisco. Logically, what can we get in return if we trade him? Well, that's a great question, Brad. I actually answered that question in an earlier podcast episode, which I will include in the description below, so go ahead and watch that. I break it down 15 to 20 minutes on that specific scenario, so check it out. I'll include all my podcasts that relate to this one. If you guys don't follow me, and you guys are currently following me now, this is how I'm going to structure it, so that way you guys don't have to navigate and find out what I said, what I didn't say. My analysis and insights is always up to date because I understand that everyone has busy jobs and you guys can't watch every single podcast. Or you can, but you choose not to. Or you just get lazy. Or, like me, I get lazy sometimes. I'm just joking, I never get lazy. But you guys get the picture, alright? So I'll go ahead and include that for you, Brad. Thank you for your question. Valerie Nunez from Niner Empire asks, hi Ryan, which positions do you see the 49ers targeting this offseason? If you follow me on Twitter, I said offensive line and cornerback. That's where you start. Offensive line and cornerback. It doesn't even matter who the quarterback of your future is if you can't protect him with a strong offensive line in front. He can't go through his progressions. You're going to have no running game. The offense could be one-dimensional. This goes on and on and on. And it's just a bad experience for whoever you bring in as the successor for Jimmy Garoppolo if you choose to go that route. So, I think they should just wipe their hands clean of everyone on the roster and revamp that offensive line. You start with Weston Richburg, you save some money there. You get rid of Laken Tomlinson, save some money there. And Trent Williams, he's due $13 million because that's what he's owed this year. What do you think he's going to be asking as an unrestricted free agent? Do they have enough money to re-sign him? I don't think they do because they have 25 plus free agents coming up for unrestricted free agency, which I included in the description in the podcast. Go ahead and watch that and how it affects Fred Warner's contract long term. And as a result, John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan are going to have to sit down at the table and prioritize what's most important to them. All right, you have players like Jason Verrett coming up. You have players like K'Wan Williams coming up, who's the nickelback and a very vital piece in Robert Saleh's scheme. You also have players like Emmanuel Mosley, who's an exclusive rights free agent. He'll return. But then you got to look at the offense side of the ball. You know, there's so many unknowns, like Kyle Juszczyk. What are you going to do about him? He is the next factor and a missing piece in their scheme. And Kyle Shanahan understands the importance of Kyle Juszczyk because of what he brings to the table. So when you're sitting down at the table at the end of the year and you go through all the free agents, what they're going to have to do is say, hey, we have to cut corners next year because the cap is dropping from $198.2 million to $175. We need cap space. And how are we going to retain the best bang for our buck while still being and competing at the highest level? Those are the tough decisions that GM John Lynch has to make. All right. So to answer that question, offensive line and cornerback, you're going to have to look at the NFL draft because that's where you get your bargain rate players and helps ease the blow on the salary cap. So you look at players like Penei Sewell of Oregon, and then you have guys like Christian Darrisaw from Virginia Tech. You have guys like Rashawn Slater from Northwestern, and then you have guys like Patrick Surtain from Alabama. So those are four key players that I just mentioned that might be available when the 49ers are on the board because, as we know, we don't know how the draft position is going to play out until the end of the year comes into play. And with COVID year, as I like to call it, there's a contingency playoff format. So the 49ers are not out of the playoff picture. They jumped from 16s to 17s before the season began. Now they increased it to 8 teams if all 32 NFL teams can't play a full 16-game schedule. Okay? Moving on. Alex H. from YouTube says, hi, Beast. I wanted to apologize for writing you about the DeForest Buckner trade. You were spot on, and Armstead is struggling without him. No apologies necessary. He says, my question is, do you think Javon Kinlaw can fill the void, or is he a first-round bust? Well, my job is to project and predict, so don't feel sorry for yourself or don't feel like you have to apologize for me. That's just my job. That's what I do. That's how I gain credibility, all right? But getting back to your question, no, I don't think Javon Kinlaw is a first-round bust. I think it's too early to call him a first-round bust because we've seen what he can do, and I pointed it out in my Twitter receipts. I said he has Pro Bowl potential. I didn't like the reach, however, and that was stated in my podcast before he was drafted and then after he was drafted. I knew John Lynch was going to go in that direction based on the move that he made with DeForest Buckner. And in the DeForest Buckner deal, again, I pointed out reasons why they could have re-signed DeForest Buckner and the players that they could have got rid of in hopes of keeping DeForest Buckner because those players aren't playing anymore. It's in the description of the podcast if you don't know what I'm talking about, or if you do, you guys know what I'm talking about. Again, I connect the dots to everything, and now everything's coming to fruition. Turns out I was right. But no, it's very unfair to give Javon Kinlaw that type of status. To think that he would be the plug-and-play defensive tackle based on his height, weight, speed, freak athlete ability was unfair blame. That's unfair blame. That's unfair pressure to put on Javon Kinlaw. However, that's the status that he was put himself in, right? Because of his draft position. So it's fool's gold to think that he would duplicate that type of production, even by committee. Even by committee to duplicate that type of production, all pro production with DeForest Buckner leaving for the Indianapolis Colts, it's not fair because how many DeForest Buckners are there in the NFL at that high level? I would say only a handful, 5 at most. All right. He does need work. Like I said in my Twitter, this is what I didn't like about Javon Kinlaw. He plays with a high pad level, gets out leveraged. He does have a strong bull rush and does have violent hands, but he doesn't have an array of pass rush moves at this stage of his career. Now, you can call it what you want. We saw a great game from Javon Kinlaw against the New Orleans Saints where he had 1.5 sacks and really showed up in the pass rush department. So, again, I like Javon Kinlaw. I don't think we should call him a first-round bust. I think we should pump the brakes on that. Let the guy develop. I mean, it's only been 10 games. He's not even through his his whole rookie season yet. He still has second half play yet. So let's sit back, take a wait-and-see approach, and even next year, see how he progresses from year 1 to year 2. As Jim Harbaugh says, that's where you make the most progressions in your young NFL career is from year 1 to year 2 because you're not thinking all the time. You're more reacting. Okay? All right, let's move on. Ted V. Caught your Fred Warner scenarios, and it really got me thinking, where is the money going to come from? Thanks, from Florida. Well, Ted V., great question. Where is the money going to come from? Because you have 25 unrestricted free agents, right? The 49ers also have $34 million in overdue money to Fred Warner, who's due a front-loaded contract. And again, if you don't understand where that money or where these numbers are coming from, it's in the description below. Watch my podcast. I explain it there how Bobby Wagner is the highest paid middle linebacker in the NFL. Fred Warner is the lowest paid, or one of the lowest paid middle linebackers, starting middle linebackers in the NFL on a rookie deal. The last 2 years, he's been outperforming Bobby Wagner, and the difference of the premium that he's been owed over the course of the 2 years comes out to $34 million, and that should be included in his second contract that he's deserved. Front-loaded. And with a decreased salary cap that I just mentioned, going from $198.2 million to now dropping to $175 million due to COVID, there's just not enough money to go around. These hard decisions are going to be made by GM John Lynch, and it's going to be interesting how he plays this because he already made mistakes with defensive front 7 players, which I pointed out in the description of the podcast that he's the worst when it comes to evaluating and trading and signing unrestricted free agents from the defensive front 7 alone in the NFC West. All right. Okay, moving on. Chris on Instagram says, are you going to post more of your workouts on YouTube? You a beast, bro. Well, yes, the answer is yes. If you don't follow me on Instagram, I've been posting my workout videos, my fitness grind on Instagram stories for the better half of the last 3 years, and it's been a huge hit in terms of my following. It's got good feedback, and people who may not be comfortable asking me questions, I'll post it for them, and then they will respond with their questions accordingly. So yes, I'll be posting everything that I did on Instagram in my Twitter fleets, and Twitter fleets is just like Instagram stories, but I'll also be uploading those videos onto my YouTube channel for all of you can see. All right, and if you guys can leave your comments, that's great because that's how I like interacting with you guys. So please, if you're watching this video, go ahead and leave your comments, anything not just workout related, any questions you have, I'll go ahead and answer those the best I can. All right, moving on. Sanjeet Singh from YouTube says, you're crazy accurate. What's your analysis on Steelers winning it all? Well, again, if you check my Twitter receipts, I said the AFC North team, Baltimore Ravens, would be representing the AFC in the Super Bowl. However, I did change my pick week 3 based on Big Ben because it came down before the season began in my preseason rankings. Came down for me between if Big Ben can stay healthy and with the Baltimore Ravens coming off the season that they had and the offseason trades and moves that they made and the draft class that they had brought in, I thought they were going to be the front runners. But after week 3, I changed my pick just because I saw what Big Ben was doing and how that transformed the team. It was basically a tale of two AFC North teams as my preseason Super Bowl pick. It was initially Ravens. I now switched it to Steelers after week 3. Not like right now. Of course, they're undefeated. No, it was after week 3 that I made that switch. And it comes down to 3 AFC teams. It comes down to the Chiefs, Steelers, and Ravens, right? The Ravens have the running game backed up by a strong defense. The Steelers have the defense backed up by an offense that they can win in multiple ways. The Chiefs win with the coaching staff, with Andy Reid and Eric Bieniemy there. So when you take that all into account, it's really going to be a game of who plays sound football and who can run the football and who can stop the run the most. And let me just point this out. The reason why the Steelers are struggling, the reason why the Pittsburgh Steelers are struggling in the run game, in the run defense, is simply due to Tyson Alualu not being there the last 2 games, excuse me. He is actually playing in the last year of his contract, and he is playing at an all-pro level in my grading system. So Tyson Alualu is the glue that makes that run defense go, and without him plugged in the middle, everything else falls apart, as we're seeing the last 2 games. So with Tyson Alualu back, if he's healthy, Steelers going to win it all. I don't care who's coming out of the NFC, the Steelers going to win it all. Well, at least that's my pick. All right. Thank you for your question, Sanjit. Now let's move on to Ben Jackson from Facebook. As a Seahawks fan, I have to admit you're right that Bobby Wagner lost a step. Do you think Fred Warner can duplicate the same success as Wagner in his prime? That's a great question, man. That's a really great question, Ben. Gosh, where do I start? I guess I would start with Fred Warner's age. He's only 23, so as long as he stays healthy, he has the inside track of duplicating Bobby Wagner's production and even succeeding his production, because Bobby Wagner was a 6-time All-Pro, 5-time first team, 1-time second team. That's a hard kind of production to duplicate. I mean, you're talking about a Hall of Fame player in Bobby Wagner. Now, it all comes down to, like I said, can Fred Warner stay healthy, whether it's in SF or wherever else he goes? He just needs to stay healthy. He's only 23 years old, so he has the inside track, like I said, and surpassing those all-pro numbers. I think he could be 8, 9 first-team all-pro. He's that good. He's sound in coverage, better in coverage than Bobby Wagner. I think that's the difference. That's why I give Warner the edge. And he's just really, really coming along well. And just this is only his, 3rd year? And the last 2 years, he's been outplaying Bobby Wagner, lights out in the run defense as well as the pass. Okay, so let's move on. Jassy Blank from Twitter says, Do you think Steelers will release Ben Roethlisberger at the end of the year? That's a great question. Another great question, Jassy. Again, it comes down to the salary cap. They are in the same shoes as the 49ers as well as the other 31 NFL teams, in that the cap drops from $198.2 million to $175. And when you do that, you have to cut corners somewhere. He has a $41.2 million cap hit, I believe, and if they were to wipe their hands clean of Ben Roethlisberger, I believe they would save roughly $19 million. I'm not sure. Let me double check on that, because I don't want to spit numbers that are inaccurate. Just give me a second. I believe it was 19 million. Yes, it's 19 million. And then again, you got to look at cutting corners, right? Like, where are they going to cut? Because they have unrestricted free agents coming up. They have starting left tackle Alejandro Villanueva. They also have a nickel back, just like the 49ers situation, coming up for unrestricted free agency, and Mike Hilton. And then you have edge rusher Bud Dupree, who's playing at an all-pro level. So you really need to assess your team and kind of pick and choose how you want to play this game, because of course you want every player, but you can't keep everyone because there's a thing called the salary cap. So my best bet is Ben Roethlisberger will take a contract extension. A contract extension is different from a restructure simply because Big Ben is toward the end of that contract, so they can't restructure it any more than they already have. So the best bet would be to then give him a contract extension, easing the blow of the cap over the lifelong of that contract. Okay? So that's my analysis on that, and I believe that's it. Oh, one more question. This comes from Kevin. Kevin, what is your question? He says, I've been watching your workouts on Instagram, and I just want to say you're inspiration, bro. How can I get abs like you? Well, It comes down to genetics. Genetics play a role in it. I'm not going to sit here and lie. Also, how you structure your diet, how you structure your game plan when you go into the gym also plays a role. It's all about calories in, calories out. Also comes down to conditioning. There's a lot of factors that build abs. You cannot just be overweight or considered obese and be like, okay, I'm going to get abs, just by doing 1,000 crunches. That's not how it's going to work. You have to cut down the fat. In order for abs to even be noticeable, you have to be down in the 10% range of body fat. 10% range of body fat, okay? So let me repeat that. 10% range of body fat in order for just to see the abs, because you can have strong abs and be covered by fat. But in order to get those abs to look 3D and pop, you really need to strict up your diet in a way where it's going to actually look hard and look that, what do you got? I guess you can call it the aesthetic look, and really pop on the obliques. So again, I see people at the gym doing 1,000 ab crunches a day. I see the same guys doing 1,000 ab crunches a day, and it does absolutely no justice. So the best bet would be to get down to 10% body fat, which means you have to do a lot of cardio. You have to be conditioned to do cardio, and make sure that your heart rate is always in what's called a fat burning zone, which I'll break down in a later YouTube podcast for all of you, and explain exactly the details of how to go ahead and shred the fat and gain the muscle. All right, well, that'll be it for today. I hope you had what I like to offer. If you did, please hit the subscribe button in the lower right hand corner of your screen. Also, in the duration of all my BEASTwriter podcast videos, there's a thumbs up, so give it a thumbs up. You can also subscribe there as well. All right, thank you for tuning in. Have a good night. BEASTwriter out.